Welcome to Heart, Soul and Melanin. I'm your storyteller. We're here for the ones who've spent years being strong, the ones who've been the foundation and the rock, but forgotten who they were along the way. From the rain-slicked streets of London to the red dust of Benin, we tell stories that don't just look like you, they feel like you. Real stakes, real history, real love. Subscribe, and let's find our way home together. "7:42 a.m. Eniola arrived at her office early to prepare, to armour herself before Clive Baptiste showed up and started seeing things she'd rather keep hidden. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him standing in that boardroom, felt the weight of his question, if you could walk away, would you? She'd called Tash again. They'd talked for an hour, about law, about psychology, about fear and disappointment, and all the things mothers and daughters don't say until it's almost too late. Tasha had fallen asleep mid-conversation, exhausted and relieved. Eniola had stayed on the line just to hear her breathe. Outside, the morning city sounds filtered up, light traffic on the Thames, the distant horn of a delivery truck. Somewhere in the building, a coffee machine gurgled. She unlocked her office door with a soft click and stopped. Clive was already there, sitting in her chair, not behind her desk like he owned it, but turned toward the window, looking out at the Thames in the grey morning light. 2 coffee cups sat on her desk, steam rising. He turned when she entered. The salt and pepper at his temples caught the light. Those dark eyes tracked her movement across the room. "You're early," she said, trying to sound professional, trying not to notice the way his white shirt was rolled to his forearms, the dark skin of his arms a contrast that made her throat tight. "So are you," he said. His voice was morning rough, deeper than yesterday, the South London in it more pronounced, like he hadn't put on his professional polish yet. He stood, 6'2" of him unfolding from her chair. She'd forgotten how much space he took up. "I brought coffee," he said, gesturing to her desk. "Black, no sugar. You had 3 cups yesterday, never added anything." Eniola set her bag down slowly. "You were watching me drink coffee." "I was watching you perform. There's a difference." He moved toward her desk, handed her a cup. Their fingers brushed. His hands were large, broad palms, long fingers, the kind of hands that looked like they knew how to hold things carefully. She pulled back too quickly. The coffee sloshed. "Careful," he said, and there was something in his voice, something low and intimate that made her aware of how small her office suddenly felt. He smelled expensive and familiar at all once. "How was the call with your daughter?" he asked. She blinked. Deflect, redirect, stay professional. "That's not relevant to your assessment." "It's relevant to you," he said simply, "which makes it relevant." Silence. Her computer hummed as it booted. The city waking beyond the window felt distant, muffled. Eniola sat down at her desk, took a sip of coffee. Perfect temperature, perfect strength. He'd paid attention. "She told him," she said finally, "about her wanting to change courses, about why she was afraid to tell me. And I told her to do what makes her happy, even if it's not what I planned." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Even if it's not what I planned." Clive sat down across from her, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The movement brought him closer. That scent again. She fought the urge to lean in. "That must have been hard," he said quietly. "Letting go of my dream for her." Eniola laughed, but it came out bitter. "Or admitting I was living through her because I gave up my own." "Both." She studied him. The concern in his face wasn't professional courtesy, it was real. We can do this 2 ways, he said, his voice pitched low just for her. You can perform for me the way you perform for Graham and everyone else in this building. Give me the polished answers, the corporate script. He paused, held her gaze. Or you can let me see the real problem. One of those ways helps you, the other way helps him. Her breathing came out in a long exhale. If I let you see the real problem, she said slowly, what happens when you write your report? It depends, he said, on whether you want me to help you survive this place or help you realize you don't have to. The day unfolded like a strange dance. Clive shadowed her through back-to-back client calls. He sat in the corner of her office, silent, watching. She tried to ignore him. Impossible. She was aware of him the way you're aware of weather, a constant presence, changing the atmosphere of every room. On a call with a global insurer, she was brilliant, she always was, pivoting objections, building consensus, closing gaps in the conversation before they became deal breakers. When she hung up, she felt the familiar rush, the high of winning. You're good at that, Clive said from the corner. Thank you. It wasn't a compliment, it was an observation. She turned in her chair to face him. What's the difference? He stood, walked closer, stopped at the edge of her desk. A compliment is about admiration. An observation is about truth. And the truth is you're exceptional at convincing people to say yes to things they didn't know they wanted. The question is whether you enjoy any of it. Eniola opened her mouth, closed it. She couldn't answer. Come on, Clive said, checking his watch. It's past 1. We're getting lunch. I usually work through lunch. I know, he said. They didn't leave the building. The soft rustle of takeaway bags announced their arrival before she could see them. Clive had ordered from 2 different vendors at Borough Market, Caribbean from the Jamaican store near the cheesemongers, West African from the West African place by the fish market. He spread the containers out on her desk like an offering. She heard the pop of a drink cap being opened. I didn't know what you'd want, so I got options. Eniola stared at the food. Jollof rice, fried plantain, curry goat, dumplings, saltfish fritters. Her stomach twisted with something that wasn't hunger. When's the last time you had a proper meal? He asked, sitting down across from her. I eat, she said defensively. Meal deal sandwiches at your desk don't count. He pushed a container toward her. Try this. My mum makes it better, but this place comes close. She took a bite of the curry goat. Rich, tender, the Scotch bonnet heat building slowly. Good? He asked. Good, she admitted. He smiled, a real smile that changed his entire face, made him look younger, less consultant and more man. Now you, he said, nodding at her jollof. Let me see if this is better than the Ghanaian version. It is, she said firmly, obviously. Bold claim, he said, leaning forward, taking a forkful from her container. Their hands were close, not touching, but close enough that the air between them felt charged. He ate, considered. It's good, he admitted, but I'm not conceding the argument. Of course you're not, she said, matching his smile. You're Caribbean. You people are stubborn. You people? He raised an eyebrow, amused. And what are you, Nigerians? Right, she said, matching his smile. We're right. He laughed, a deep, warm sound that seemed to fill the small space between them. Eniola felt something in her chest loosen, something that had been clenched tight for years. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The building around them emptied as people went to lunch. It was just them, the food, the quiet intimacy of sharing a meal. Tell me about your mum, Eniola said. Clive leaned back in his chair. Paulette Baptiste, retired nurse, raised me alone in Peckham. My dad left when I was 2. She worked night shifts, double shifts, any shift that meant I could go to a good school. His voice softened when he talked about her, the professional polish stripped away completely. She taught me 2 things.
Work hard, but not so hard you forget what you're working for, and never ever let anyone make you feel small. He watched her across the desk. What about your dad? You mentioned him yesterday. Eniola set down her fork. Chukudwi Davies, Nigerian immigrant, 3 jobs, 6 days a week. He wanted me to be a lawyer, thought it was the pinnacle, proof he'd made it in this country, raising a daughter who could argue in British courts. Her voice wavered. He died when I was 16, heart attack at work. I found out later he'd been having chest pains for months, but couldn't afford to miss shifts. Just their breathing filled the space between them. I got pregnant with Tasha at 23. I'd only just got my legal training contract. Had to give it up to become a single mother. Everything my father didn't want for me. So I worked. I clawed my way into corporate. I made myself indispensable. I thought if I could just succeed enough, it would justify everything. And has it? Clive asked quietly. She met his gaze, at the concern in his dark eyes, at the way he sat perfectly still, giving her space to fall apart if she needed to. No, she whispered. Clive reached across the desk, not to touch her, but to move his hand closer, an invitation. Your father would be proud of you, Eniola, but I don't think he'd want you this exhausted, this alone. You didn't know him. No, Clive agreed, but I know what it's like to sacrifice everything to prove you're worthy of a space they were never going to give you freely. Something in his voice made her look up sharply. What do you mean? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I worked at Deloitte for 14 years, made partner at 33, youngest black partner in the London office at the time. I thought I'd arrived. Then I realized I was still the only one in the room, still working twice as hard, still biting my tongue in meetings where they'd take credit for my ideas. His jaw tightened. I had a heart attack at 39, minor one, wake-up call. I was in the hospital, and all I could think was, I'm killing myself for people who see me as a diversity metric. Eniola's breath caught. Clive? So, I quit, he said simply. Started my own firm, smaller clients, my terms. I answer my mum's calls, I sleep at night, I'm happy. He held her gaze, and the intensity in it made her pulse quicken. I saw you in that boardroom. I saw myself, and I thought maybe I could help you see what I couldn't until it almost killed me. It was past 8 when Eniola glanced up from her laptop and realized they were the only ones left on the floor. The building felt different at night. Silence, except for the hum of her computer. Occasionally she could hear the distant sound of the cleaning crew, a vacuum somewhere on another floor, a cart rolling past in the corridor. The lights in the surrounding offices were dark. London spread out below them, the Thames reflecting city lights like scattered gold. You should go home, Clive said. He was still there, still sitting in the chair across from her desk, reading through her client files. One more email, she said automatically. He closed the folder he was reading, fixed his gaze on her. Eniola, go home. I just need to... No, he said, and there was something firm in his voice, not controlling, protective. You don't. Whatever it is, it can wait until tomorrow. She bristled. You don't get to tell me what I need to do. You're right, he said. He had stood, had started gathering his things. So I'll wait. What? He sat back down, settled into the chair like he had all the time in the world. I'll wait. Finish your email, then we leave, together. Why would you do that? He watched her, his dark eyes steady in the low light of her office. Because I don't think anyone's waited for you in a long time. Her breathing came unsteady. The soft whir of her laptop's fan was suddenly the loudest sound in the room. Something broke in her chest, a small, sharp crack in the armour. She closed her laptop without finishing the email. Okay, she said quietly. Let's go. The elevator dinged, their footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. The building's revolving door swished as they pushed through it. The cold air stole her breath, and already bone-deep exhausted, the shock of it made her lightheaded. She stumbled, just slightly. He was there, his hand catching her elbow, steadying her. "I'm fine," she said, but she didn't pull away. "I know," he said, but he didn't let go. They stood there, his hand solid and strong on her arm through her coat, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him, close enough that she could see the thickness of his lashes as she looked into his eyes, close enough that she caught that scent again, bergamot and spice, warm cocoa butter underneath, and couldn't help but breathe it in deeply. "Eniola," he said, his voice low, a warning or maybe a question. The air between them changed, thickened. She was aware of everything, the width of his shoulders, the way his chest rose and fell with each breath, the size of his hand on her arm, large enough to wrap her around completely, gentle enough that she knew he'd let go the moment she asked. She didn't ask. "I should walk you to your car," but he didn't move. "You should," that she didn't move either. For a moment, a breathless, impossible moment, she thought he might kiss her, or she might kiss him. The wanting was a physical thing, a pull low in her stomach. Her skin felt too tight. But then he stepped back, professional boundary snapping back into place like elastic. He cleared his throat. "Come on, car park." Their footsteps echoed in the underground car park. Then they heard it. Rain, sudden and heavy, drumming against the concrete ramp leading up to street level. The rain started as they reached the car park exit, not gentle, a downpour. Eniola stopped at the threshold, staring out at her car 20 meters away. "Of course," she muttered. Clive shouldered off his coat, held it over both their heads. "Come on, run." They ran, his arm around her shoulders, holding the coat like a shelter, her body pressed against his side, the warmth of him, the solid mass of him, the way her breath caught every time they moved in sync. By the time they reached her car, they were both breathless, laughing. The coat had done almost nothing. They were soaked. Eniola fumbled with her keys. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold. "Here," Clive said, taking them from her. His fingers brushed hers. She felt the touch like electricity. He unlocked the car, opened the door for her. They stood there in the rain, water running down his face, the front of his white shirt clinging to the muscles of his shoulders and chest, his hair glistening, the streetlights turning the droplets on his dark skin into something luminous. He was beautiful. The thought hit him like a fist. Not handsome, not attractive, beautiful, in a way that made her ache. "What would you do?" he asked suddenly, his voice almost lost under the sound of rain. Eniola laughed, bitter, exhausted. "I don't know. I've never let myself imagine it. Maybe it's time to start." He opened her car door wider. Their hands brushed again as she took back her keys. The touch lingered, his thumb grazing the inside of her wrist, just for a second. Maybe accidental, maybe not. She glanced up at him, rain streaming down both their faces, his dark eyes locked on hers. "Clive," she whispered. Not a question, not a statement, just his name. "Get in the car, Eniola," he said softly, but there was heat in his voice, restraint that sounded like it cost him. She got in the car. He closed the door. Through the rain-streaked window, she watched him walk back toward the building. Broad shoulders, slow, deliberate steps. He didn't run, even in the downpour. She sat there, engine running, the windshield wipers beating their rhythm, watching him disappear into the building. Then she drove home.
Later that night, Eniola couldn't sleep.
She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the blue light of her phone illuminating her room. 2 texts from Clive sat on her screen. I stopped being objective the moment I realised I cared whether you chose yourself. You deserve better than this, Eniola, and I think you know it. Eniola's stomach did a slow, sick flip. She read the messages 3 times. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. She didn't reply, but she didn't delete the messages either. In 10 years at this firm, she had seen allies turn into executioners the moment a bonus was on the line. Was Clive genuinely risking his career for her? Or was this a sophisticated audit technique, getting her to admit her lack of commitment so he could hand Graham the perfect excuse to fire her without a payout? If she trusted him and he threw her to the wolves in that boardroom, she wouldn't just lose her job, she'd lose Tasha's tuition, her security, and everything she'd spent a decade forging. She stared at the ceiling as the rain softened against the glass. For the first time, the perfect Eniola Davis was truly afraid. Eniola Davies has spent a decade building a fortress stone by stone. But tonight, the walls feel thin. Clive Baptiste has cracked the professional veneer, offering a glimpse of a life where she doesn't have to carry the world alone. But in Eniola's world, care is often a currency, and she's wondering what Clive's invoice looks like. Is this the beginning of a beautiful connection, or the most sophisticated corporate trap she's ever encountered? Is he the sanctuary she's been praying for, or is he just the most charming executioner she's ever met? The board meeting is only hours away. If she trusts him and she's wrong, she loses everything: her security, her daughter's future, and the identity she sacrificed her soul to build. The final chapter of Eniola and Clive's story, Part 3, The Close, is coming tomorrow. In the boardroom, the truth always comes out. The question is, who will Eniola be when the audit is finally over? Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the conclusion. I want to hear from you in the comments. In her position, would you reply to that text, or would you delete it and prepare for war? Thank you for listening to Heart, Soul and Melanin, and I'll catch you in the final part.